Have you ever felt like you've made so many mistakes in life that you can't move forward? Like your whole life story needs to be tossed in the trash and rewritten? I know I have. But today's guest is going to show us the powerful way that she took her mistakes and used them to rewrite her story. And now she's helping others rewrite their stories. Because even our mistakes are storytelling. I'm Jonathan Jordan, your storytelling coach, and this is Everything is Storytelling, a podcast for people obsessed with story. So before I introduce our guest today, I do need to give a trigger warning to listeners that there will be discussions in today's episode about alcoholism. So if that is a source of particular pain for you, we totally understand if you want to skip this one. But our hope is that it will bring you some hope and light. So our guest today is Brittany Young, who is an executive coach to sober curious high achievers, helping them replace alcohol with life-giving tools for success and freedom. She's also a speaker, and she calls herself the Sober Fairy Godmother, a title that I'm obsessed with. And she's a fellow Texan living in the capital of weird, Austin, where she lives with her husband and daughter. Brittany, I'm so excited that we finally get to talk with each other. Thank you for being here.
Of course, my fellow Texan. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I love Austin. I don't get down there nearly as much as I should.
Well, it's definitely weird, that's for sure. And we keep it that way for a reason.
Yeah, it's like a whole slogan. It's a bumper sticker. I've seen it before.
Yep. It's a whole vibe.
Yeah, so I know this part's going to be a little bit tough, but before we get into our main discussion, I would love to kind of hear you just give a little bit of a quick overview of how you ended up where you are. Of course, I've seen a lot of your posts sharing your story online, but I'd love to just kind of hear the connection between, I guess, your journey in particular with alcohol and now how that has connected to you coaching people to let go of alcohol as part of their journey.
All right, to sum it up and to congratulate myself, tomorrow, the 18th of September, is my 11th year of sobriety, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. The story began when I was basically 17, and it started as me trying to fit in to the in crowd,
Mm,
and I used alcohol to do that. I felt at that age that I was pretty isolated and often left out of a lot of things because I wasn't participating in the teenage drinking culture.
mm,
And so when I finally decided to get into it, I quickly went down a slippery slope. And that slippery slope, unfortunately, led me to 10 years of drinking and really hiding myself behind a bottle.
mm,
I used alcohol to block my feelings, to cope with uh, different assaults that I had been through, and then really to block my own voice and my emotions because I did not want to feel what I had gone through for over a decade. When I made the decision to surrender and get sober on September 18th of 2013, my whole life changed. And I was working in corporations at the time, specifically in the chemical industry. And as I made this decision to get sober, one of the first things that I did was tell my employer.
mm.
Now, some of you are listening and going, "Oh my gosh, how could you do that?" But that was the really the beginning of where I am today and why I coach high achievers, because the authenticity and stripping down and telling the truth was the very first step in sobriety for me.
Yeah.
And so when that occurred and I made that decision, my whole life began. And I don't look at the decade of drinking as not having a life. I often looked to alcohol to save me. And I often
Mm,
say that alcohol did save my life because it was actually the beginning of where I'm at today. And why I coach people is because I do truly believe that the tides are turning. We're at a place, especially here in the United States, where people are looking at alcohol and saying, do I really need this in my life?
yeah.
And so I feel as if I'm at the beginning of something big, something shifting, something ready to move. And I love being at the beginning of a movement where I get to become a leader in that movement, take a stand. I don't know where it's going to go. I have no idea. But what I do know is when people are ready, I'm going to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, so I think you're definitely right because this is a conversation I've been hearing come up in multiple sectors. And, I think it's easy for sometimes people to sequester this to like almost a religious conversation, like, oh, you're dropping alcohol because yeah, of some religious reason. But I'm hearing it in circles that don't care about religion whatsoever. They're just realizing this is not great for me, and it's not giving me what I thought it was. Right. I'm curious. This wasn't one of my intended questions originally, but I'm curious. Like, how did your employer respond when you shared that information with them? Was there support? Was there shock? Was there indifference? I'm curious what that conversation was like. If you're open to sharing,
Honestly, there was nothing but support.
awesome.
The man that I worked for at the time, although, would have a few drinks, was actually a very supportive person in my life, a very beautiful mentor that I was able to lean on. And because I began trusting myself to share my story, I was able to trust him with that information.
Mm,
And what I loved about telling him was he asked me, do I have permission to share this? Or do you want me to keep this confidential?
mm,
And at the time, I asked him to keep it confidential
yeah,
for many reasons, because I was in sales. And so if you're listening, the reason why I work with high performers and high achievers is because sales is often equated with money equaling success.
yeah,
These days, when I define success with a client, it has nothing to do with status, finance, any of that. It has everything to do with how authentic and how truthful are you being. That equals success. So when I look back to the success of being able to tell him, but stay in confidentiality, what that allowed me to do was redefine how I was going to show up as a saleswoman in
mm,
a very lucrative and prominent field like chemical sales. And that's specifically in the pharmaceutical industry. And so in that industry, drinking is everything.
yeah,
People go out, they take their customers to a bar or a restaurant, and everybody's having a cocktail.
yeah,
So, when I told Mike, hey, I'm making this decision, and he said, okay, I'll keep it confidential. It was interesting. Not one of my customers batted an eye when
yeah,
I didn't pick up a drink. They were very supportive. And then I slowly was able to share with them not what I went through, but why I was making the decision to quit.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's man, I think that's so powerful, that idea of redefining what those relationships, those professional relationships were going to look like for you. And I mean, that definitely, resonates because I don't think I realized you were in pharmaceuticals, but and I think I've shared this before, not on the show, but like my grandfather died of alcoholism, and he was a doctor, and he was a family doctor at the time that like pharmaceutical reps first started showing up at offices. And so, yeah, I think it was really easy to go for a drink afterwards, to have a little meeting and hear what was new on the market, and, until that became a habit that
Yeah.
couldn't be broken. And my mom has talked before about like how she loved her dad, but she did not love who he became when he was drunk, right? And would come home. So
Yes.
like it's scary how what starts out as a way to connect with people for professional reasons can take over your life. It's scary.
It's scary and it's more common than we think.
Yeah.
Today, 1 in 5 families is impacted by alcohol, whether that is the person drinking or the family itself.
Yeah.
A decade ago, Jonathan, it was 1 in 12.
Holy cow.
So
Jeez.
this is a silent killer. We're really big these days on talking about fentanyl,
Yeah.
but we often forget that alcohol is one of those drugs that people would rather not talk about. It's still taboo,
Yeah.
and yet it's in your face everywhere that you turn, everywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's just so socially acceptable,
Hmm.
like we just don't even think about it a lot of times.
Right.
So keeping with that frame of mind of like kind of redefining your story, I mean, that's what we're all about here is the idea of storytelling and everything being storytelling. And so I'd love to hear you talk about how you have reframed your past mistakes as a way that you can now serve people and help people. Can you kind of talk about that shift for you?
That's a really juicy question.
I know, right?
And I think for me, it comes down to three main things. And
Hmm.
this is what I talk about with clients in my breakthrough BS method. Number one is really about reclaiming your identity. So we're often in a mask or an identity that we're choosing to show everybody. And my kind of redefinement, if you will, is when I moved to Texas in 2015, I
Hmm.
wanted to leave the old Brittany behind in Pennsylvania. And I didn't want negativity following me. I didn't want any drama following me from my past. And so I made the decision that I was going to become someone else.
Mm.
Now you might be listening to this and think, oh, Britney Spears, she shaved her head and all the things. Kind of,
Yeah.
but I'm not that crazy. I just made a decision within myself and I had the wherewithal to make this decision that I no longer wanted to be the old person and
Mm.
I was going to show up differently. And in that difference, I wanted to be more of a positive seeker, somebody that didn't allow the past to define her, but to be empowered by the positive choices that she was making.
Mm.
And so with that, I started understanding for myself what the definition of success really looked like.
Yeah.
And so I began reclaiming who I wanted to become. As I was doing this, I also really understood the power of emotional intelligence.
Mm.
A lot of people talk about emotional intelligence. I'm a feeler. So the way that I see my life, the way that I look at my past is
Hmm.
instead of avoiding it, I'm going to run through the brick wall of the anger, the frustration, the disappointment until I get to the bottom of all of it and the root cause of where I was to where I'm at. And for me, that is about not only healing my soul, but also in the process, healing my mindset. Because if
Mm.
I can feel, I can heal. So as I go through, I have a specific process that I follow for this, but as I go through the feeling, my mindset starts to shift. And I go from, I have to question everything and prove my worth
Mm.
to, I don't have to do any of that. I don't even need to explain to you XYZ.
Yeah.
And then part three is take action. And this is where a lot of people either self sabotage or they're running through that brick wall right alongside of me. And I think that's the difference maker between a successful leader and somebody that's okay at leading.
Mm,
is, are you willing to run through that wall no matter what because you know what's on the other side of it? And when you take massive action, your mindset is completely different. You know who you're becoming, and you're willing to go to any length to get to that place. And it's very similar to the journey of alcoholism.
mm,
You will run towards the bottle and go
yeah.
to any length to make sure that you have that dopamine hit. When you get sober, that's the same type of action that you need to take, right?
Mm,
You're going to run towards that success no matter what it looks like for you. And you have to be the one that defines it.
that's good. So you replace the vice with vision.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was already going to ask you a little bit about the breakthrough BS method, some another name that I'm obsessed with, and you just did it. You read my mind, so I love that. What I'd love to hear more about, because I know you've gotten some pushback on this. I would love to hear what some of the most common objections are that you hear. And like, I'll be upfront, like speaking for myself, like I have not given up alcohol. Like I still drink on occasion. It's rare because it is something I'm mindful of, especially with family history. But I just to be completely frank, I do still have a drink every now and then.
Mhm.
So I'd love to hear like when someone comes to you with maybe that kind of attitude of like,
Sure.
it's not controlling me. I'm in control of it. What are some of the responses that you have to either people who are kind of living in maybe denial or just straight up the haters? Choose whichever answer you want.
Well, I think we could look at both. And I have no
Yeah,
judgment on people that occasionally drink or even
yeah,
moderately drink. I mean, I have family members that still participate in drinking almost daily.
yeah.
And that's a choice because, as God would have it, each one of us has free will.
Mm,
And so I'm not against you or anybody else.
yeah.
You have a choice. You're making that choice. That's your decision. Good on you. As far as the people that come after what I'm trying to do and the mission and vision that I have, bless their heart, as we say in Texas. And at the same time, the myths are alcohol is healthy, right? We can
Mm,
debunk that real quick.
yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is you're just a glorified sponsor, which there's a
Mm,
difference between going to AA in a church basement and staying anonymous. When you work with me, we're living sobriety out loud, and I'm not
mm,
a sponsor, I'm a coach. We're forward thinking. We're not living in the past like AA does. So
yeah.
this is completely different. And number three, which is my absolute favorite, you will never be successful.
Yeah.
And in my mind, they don't know what success looks like because I've made the money, I've blown the money.
Yeah.
I've lived check to check. I lived in abundance.
Mm,
I have been down the paths of success as defined by the people on the internet. And, when I get that comment of your business will never be successful,
mm,
I question and I get really curious. Well, what's your definition of success?
yes.
And the funny part is, most of the people that say that to me are men because men need to do good to feel good. Women need to feel good to do good. So we have
Mm,
a very different definition of success. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I didn't define success by money for decades.
yeah.
But I am choosing today to look at success as the impact in which I'm making, whether it carries a dollar sign or not.
Mm,
And I love when people come after me and say, this is not a profitable business. I'm not in it for the profit. I'm here to change your life in such a way that this legacy carries on for however many decades or, whatever. I don't care if I make a dime off of this.
Yeah.
It's more important to me to see you say, hey, I have explored sobriety and it has changed my life in more ways than one. Thank you for being the catalyst. Thank you for being the person behind it. And thank you for dropping the mic and walking away so that I can do this on my own now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. The idea of reframing what success means to you. And I think most people haven't done the hard work of that. They'd rather someone else define it for them. And that is a fool's errand, like
Mm-hmm.
living by someone else's definition of success. And I mean, I know because I've done that for years. So yeah, it is a fool's errand. That's so good. So you're not just helping people with the sobriety side of it. It's also this idea of finding their new identity and finding their new definition of success.
Yes, this is very much if you're what I like to call a high functioning drinker,
Yeah.
right? And that high functioning drinker is in sales or they're running a company or
Hmm.
they're, of the C suite or executive level. And they're finding that alcohol is getting in the way of their performance. And so if it is affecting your performance, you're waking up hungover, you're not feeling your best, you're not looking your best, and you want to figure out what the bottom line is for you. Where do I draw the line in the sand and say, yeah, I either kick this habit or at least pull back on it? That is the person that I'm most attracted to and
Yeah.
mostly attract because they look at me and they go, okay, you did sales. We're always in sales.
Yeah. Right.
But as I'm redefining what success looks like, I want to do that too, because for so long, as you said, somebody else put a KPI on it. Somebody
Yeah.
else told me success equals X. And in my personal experience, that was my father. My dad said, success equals money. If you don't have it, you're not successful. And I
Mm,
bought into that up until July of this year, where I thought, wow, this is really holding me back.
mm,
And I need to be able to understand what my success looks like, or this business is not going to get off the ground.
yeah.
And I'm really happy that I did that. And I'm happy that that is where God, source, universe placed me in the moment of if you were my client, Jonathan, and you came to me and said, I'm at the top of my game, but alcohol is getting in the way,
Mm,
that's where we would start, right? What's success to you? Is
yeah.
success the person that goes to all these business meetings and drinks and is hungover the next day,
Yeah.
right? Or is it somebody else?
So I'd love to hear. I'm thinking in my mind about the person who maybe is listening to this and they just don't really know what the first step is. So maybe they've come to that realization that you were just describing of realizing, oh man, yeah, alcohol is holding me back. Like I'm using it to numb pain. I'm using it in ways to satisfy something else, to ignore something. But obviously, like it is a drug,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there are withdrawal effects to it, which is why it captures people so much. So, what was some advice that you received early on in your journey that you now pay forward to others?
I think the biggest thing is awareness,
Okay,
first and foremost,
like self awareness.
self awareness.
Okay,
And I say that with hesitancy because
okay,
I never saw alcohol as an issue because
mm,
I am, by definition, an alcoholic. Now, I look at self awareness in a different lens. Think about when you put your phone down for the evening,
mm-hmm,
you are more than likely more aware. You start to look around and you're present, you're paying attention to your kids, your
Mm,
wife, your your social setting or wherever you're at. But if you're on that device 24/7 and that is your life, you cannot see what is around you.
yeah.
So the very first thing is that awareness of how is alcohol affecting and impacting your life. The exercise that I like to do with people is open up your bank account and for the last 30 days, how much did you spend at the liquor store, at
Mm,
the bar, at the restaurant? Add it up. Now multiply that by 12.
mm,
The
yeah.
average American spends, and I think this is a lie, but the average American spends $8,000 a year on alcohol. If you have the awareness as a logical being that you're spending $8,000
Yeah.
on drinking, that's going to wake you up and you're going to go, wow, okay. And if it doesn't wake you up, you have a bigger problem than you know. Because
Yeah.
if you're not shocked by spending $8,000 on alcohol, we have a bigger problem to explore, and you potentially need more help than I can give you.
Yeah. I imagine that's got to be a really powerful exercise because you're assigning a dollar value, and it's hard to ignore those kind of metrics
Mhm.
when you're confronted
Yeah.
with it. Because yeah, even if that's true, even if the average American is spending 8 grand a year, I mean, you think about it. For some people, that means you could be paying off your mortgage like 10 years early if you would just put it there instead.
Yep.
That's wild to think about.
What's even more wild is the people that go, oh, it's just 8 grand.
Yeah.
And I've had those conversations
Uh
and
huh.
they say it's just $8,000. But to me, like you said, that 8 grand could go towards a new fence, which we know in the state of Texas, that's going to rot out real quick.
Real fast.
Or it's going to go towards your honeymoon or your dream
Yeah.
vacation or your wedding. And
Yeah.
you are self sabotaging your own world.
Yeah.
So, think about that. What could $8,000 over the course of 12 months or, and just even the year, right?
Yeah.
What could that do for you?
I mean, that's really cool. My brain hadn't even gone to the financial side of it, of just thinking about that kind of a wake up call, just simply by putting a dollar value on there. I think that's absolutely huge. Um, so I want to think about this too, because I think, and you've written about this before, and I love how you've kind of phrased this in the past of that you don't really look at your mistakes so much as mistakes anymore and you said it at the front end, like alcohol is part of what got you to where you are today.
Mhm.
And I think that's such a powerful like reframe to like not ignore it but to see it as part of your story. And so I'd love to hear like what encouragement would you give to someone, whether it's alcohol or another drug or a toxic relationship, whatever it is that's holding them back, some past mistake weighing them down. What's the encouragement you would offer that person?
You are not your mistake.
Mm,
You are simply a child of a higher power,
hmm.
and you are worthy to receive what it is that you desire. You get to be empowered by your choices today. And
Mm,
those past quote unquote mistakes, they either get to define you or they don't.
yeah. And ultimately, that's your choice if you let them define you.
You always have a choice. And I think we get stuck in, I don't have a choice in this matter. But that's why we
Yeah.
were given free will.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I go to recovery on Wednesday nights at my church. And I go for anxiety and depression, but there's a lot of people in there for different reasons. And the guy who leads it, meth was his thing for a long time. And he talks about kind of like the traditional recovery culture and kind of how the labels are a lot of times where are holding people back from really
Yes.
healing because they cannot move past that label of I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug abuser, I'm whatever you want to fill that blank in. And so, yeah, I think that's so good to just say, hey, you're not your mistake. You made a mistake. Yes, we all do, but you get to redefine it today. That's so good.
Yeah, I was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I know that I will never pick up alcohol again. So help me, Lord.
Yeah.
I know that about myself. I have that will,
Yeah.
that willpower inside of me. However, if I'm sitting in the church basement and somebody's saying, "Well, you're still an alcoholic." No, I am not.
Mm,
Because number 1, I've been saved, and number 2, that mistake saved my life.
mm,
And so I can justify it. And I don't have to look at myself as that label any longer. It was me, sure, for a decade, but I'm on the
yeah.
other side of that decade. I'm 11 years in, baby. I don't have to be that person anymore. I get to choose.
Yeah.
And so do you. Yep.
Yeah. And see, I love hearing you say it that way because this is something I coach my clients in sometimes. Is one of my favorite stories to get out of clients is what I call mistake lesson stories. And I a lot of times I try to push them to say like don't do what most people do with a mistake story and like try to put a spin on it of like, oh, but I turned it into this opportunity. It's like if that happened, great, like, but be honest and authentic about it. But more importantly, let's focus on the lesson that came out of it. Even if the story had a terrible ending and you would never want to relive that again, like what did you learn? Because a lot of times that's more valuable than trying to like turn it into again just spinning it into and here's why I'm awesome now, you know.
Right, right. Well, I've got one for you. So
Yeah,
when I
please.
was, I don't know, 22, I was sitting on a sidewalk
Mm-hmm.
and I was absolutely belligerent. And
Mm,
the cops were ready to put handcuffs on me. And the funny part about this story is, the cop was on a horse. And so he had to actually get down in order to put the handcuffs on me. And by grace, a friend stepped in and said, "I will carry her home personally.
mm-hmm.
Please do not cuff her." And the guy said, "Well, who are you to her?"
Yeah.
And he said, "A guardian angel." And for some reason, it was as if I woke up from being drunk, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm alert, I'm awake, I'm ready to go." And this person is literally saving my life from what could have been a DWI or intoxication in public,
Yeah.
what have you. Do I look at that story as a mistake? No,
Yeah.
because it doesn't define who I am in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. No, I love that. Thanks for thanks for sharing because that's a perfect example of a mistake lesson story. It's like
Yeah,
you come out the other side. It's like you can't change what happened. Like that's not
exactly.
the point. You're not trying to like reframe it or redeem it or make yourself look better with the mistake. You're just saying, "Man, here's how I screwed up, but here's what I learned from it and
Hmm.
don't make the same mistake yourself." Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, Brittany, I want to make sure people know where to find you and what you have to offer. I mean, you've already talked a little bit about the breakthrough BS method and the coaching that you do. So can you just chat a little bit more about some of the specifics of what you offer people when you're coaching them?
Absolutely. I have two ways of working with me specifically.
Hmm.
One is the what I call executive sobriety coaching one to one. So
Okay.
that is for the person who wants that tailored, specific process for them. And what you're going to get out of that is 90 days of coaching with me, one to one, every week. You know, I am that fairy godmother, so I am on speed dial if you need me to be.
Yeah.
And we're going to move you through what it looks like to become sober curious or sober permanently.
Mm.
And for that journey, that is specific to you and your needs. The other side of the business is what I'm calling Quit Like a Leader, a sober curious community. And that is being launched next week, actually.
Okay.
And so Quit Like a Leader is really for us misfits who want to begin or have been doing living sobriety out loud. And we're not living anonymously, but we're also the misfits because we don't fit in at the bar scene anymore.
Yeah.
And we really need a community to fit into, and there isn't one. And so I've took it upon myself to create what that looks like for people who are already sober or are exploring sobriety as an option or looking to either cut back on their drinking.
Okay.
And so we're going to have a variety of guests come in, share their own stories. And it's really a way of telling the truth, getting really honest. And what I like to say is getting naked in front of other people without taking your clothes off, because I think it's really important for us to shed those layers that we had been holding on to for so long and we're redefining success within this
Yeah.
community as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, for people who want the one-on-one experience, you've got that. For people who need the community, which we all know community is powerful. Being able to be around people who get it and who have the same questions as you do, even if they don't have the answers. Sometimes it's just good to be around people who have the same thoughts. That's really cool. And by the time this episode comes out, that will be up and running. So we'll make sure to have that link down in the show notes so that people can slide down and go check it out more if they need to by the time this comes out. So besides those resources that you yourself have created, are there any other resources that you like to recommend for people? Is there a book, another podcast, that just something that you've found encouraging that you kind of encourage other people with?
So I have this book that I love that I recommend to people, and it's called The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober.
Okay, cool.
The author is Catherine Gray.
Okay.
I don't have my own book yet, but that's
Yeah.
something you and I can discuss in the near future.
Sure.
The reason I love this book is because she talks about what it looks like to be on the other side of
Cool.
drinking and the culture that's shifting. And we're moving in this direction of becoming a sober society and how that actually is successful and joyful and how you
Yep.
get to define that for you.
That I have not heard of that book, so that's cool that that's out there in the world right now. You said Catherine Gray is the author's name.
Catherine Gray, yep, Gray. Yep.
GR. Okay, yeah, we'll make sure to put that down in the show notes as well because everybody loves a good book, and it's such an easy way, I think, sometimes for people to dip their toes in the water, right? Excellent. And then if people just want to connect with you further, how can they hunt you down? Where do you want people to go to find you?
Best place to find me would be LinkedIn, and I spell my name Brittany.
Yes.
Last name is Young, very easy to remember, and that's where I hang out most days.
Yeah, well, we'll have that link on there too. This is quickly becoming, of course, the LinkedIn advertising show because that's where I hang out too. That's where all my peeps are. So I love it. I have no complaints about that. It's literally the most positive social media I've ever been on.
Cool. It really is.
Yeah, well, Brittany, again, like I'm so grateful we got to talk like this because this is such an important topic. And yeah, I think we have seen like those stats. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense because how many times have I had conversations with people in the past couple of years who talk about how their drinking increased during the pandemic? And all of a sudden, yeah, they were drinking literally every single night to end their night. And so hopefully we're getting to a point where people are kind of waking up and seeing how that is holding them back a little bit. And again, it's just dangerous to let any type of substance control your thoughts and your feelings and how you view yourself. So I'm very, very, very appreciative of the work that you are doing to use your story to bring other people up.
I appreciate that very much. Your words mean a lot to me on a personal level. And one last thing that I end,
Yes.
Emails, shows, you name it with is I see you, I hear you, and I love you, because I don't think that we say that enough, even to strangers.
Brittany, thanks again for connecting and for being here to share your story and how that has shaped your journey and how you're now using that to help others. I think that's incredibly inspiring. And so if you're like me and you were inspired by what you heard today, I hope you'll scroll down to those show notes and connect with Brittany so you can learn more about her work and connect with her too. And if this idea of rewriting your mistakes and finding the lessons in them and recognizing that you are not your mistakes, but they are a part of your story, if that idea speaks to you, then go grab a copy of my new book, Start with Story, and go to chapter 5, because mistake lesson stories are one of the story types that I talk about there. And if nothing else, you can hold on a week or two, and I should be covering that story type here on the podcast as well. So remember what Brittany said. You are not your mistakes. They are a part of your story, though, and you can use them to help build the future that allows you to be your best self, because we can change the world one story at a time.